It's 3 in the morning. In a parking lot in Medellín, a man sits alone in his car. 1 week ago, he was one of the most beloved athletes on the planet. 1 week ago, millions of people were chanting his name. And then, one mistake, one single touch of a soccer ball, the wrong way. Now 3 strangers are walking toward his car, and one of them starts to count. Every word out of his mouth is the same word, over and over. Goal. Goal. How does a game, just a game, end like this? I'm Cole, and this is Midnight Files. Right now, as I'm telling you this, the World Cup is back. It's the summer of 2026, and the biggest tournament on Earth is being played right here, in America. Packed stadiums, 90,000-seat arenas shaking, whole countries stopping to watch. And Colombia is still alive in it. They made it out of their group. They're deep in the knockout rounds. And any day now, they take the field again, on American soil, chasing something they've been chasing for a very, very long time. But there's a reason this particular team, in this particular country, carries a weight nobody else does. Because 32 years ago, the last time this whole circus came to America, a Colombian player walked onto a field here, and he went home in a coffin. This is the story of Andres Escobar, the man they called the gentleman, and how one accidental touch of a ball, one honest mistake in a game, turned into one of the darkest nights in the history of the sport. Let me take you back. 1994. To understand how big this fall was, you have to understand how high they were flying. Because Colombia, that year, weren't just good, they were supposed to win it, the whole thing. In the years leading up to that World Cup, this team barely lost. In qualifying, they went undefeated. In the 2 seasons before the tournament, they lost exactly 1 game out of 26. 1. And then came the night that made the entire world look up. Buenos Aires, Argentina, one of the most feared teams in soccer, playing at home, in their own legendary stadium, a place where Argentina simply did not lose. Colombia beat them 5-0. 5-0. Argentine fans, the home crowd, stood up and applauded the other team. That's how good it was. That's how beautiful this Colombian side played. And watching all of it was a man whose opinion carried more weight than anyone's on the planet. Pelé, the greatest to ever play the game. And Pelé looked at this team and picked them to win the World Cup. At the heart of it, right in the center of that defense, stood Andres Escobar. Now, in a country and a sport that were drowning in a certain reputation, Escobar was different. He was middle class, quiet, disciplined, devoutly Catholic. He played the game clean. No dirty tackles, no theatrics, no chaos, just calm, just class. They didn't call him a nickname to be cute. They called him El Caballero del Football, the gentleman of football. He had a fiancée, Pamela, a dentist he'd been with for years. They were going to get married later that year. He was young, he was in love, and there were whispers he was about to sign with one of the giant clubs in Europe. Everything was in front of him. And it wasn't just about a trophy. You have to understand what this team meant. For years, Colombia had been known to the rest of the world for one thing: violence, cartels, bloodshed, headlines that made an entire nation flinch. And here, finally, was something else. Something to be proud of. A team that played the most beautiful soccer on the planet and made the whole world stop and watch for the right reasons. For millions of people back home, these guys weren't just athletes. They were proof that Colombia could be known for something good. That's how much was riding on them. That's what they were carrying onto the field. But here's the part of the story people forget. Here's the shadow sitting behind that golden team. In Colombia, in those years, soccer and the cartels were tangled together in a way that's hard to even describe. Drug money was pouring into the clubs. The most feared man in the country, Pablo Escobar, no relation to Andres, just the same last name, had personally poured money into the Medellín club that Andres played for. That's how deep it went. The most wanted criminal on the planet, and the gentlest player in the country, were connected by the game. And by 1994, Pablo Escobar was dead, killed months before the World Cup, and the city he'd controlled with an iron fist was spinning out of control. Everyone who'd worked under him suddenly wanted to be the boss. The violence didn't calm down, it got worse. That is the world this team stepped out of when they flew to America. And almost immediately, it followed them here. Colombia's first game was against Romania, and they were flat, nervous. Nothing like the team that had destroyed Argentina. They lost 3-1. Back home, the reaction was ugly. Death threats started coming in. The anger was already boiling. And then came the night before the biggest game of their lives, the match against the United States. Win, and they had a shot at surviving. Lose, and they were almost certainly going home. The players were in their hotel, and a message reached them. It wasn't a rumor whispered in a hallway. Threats were phoned in and faxed in, aimed at the coach, Francisco Maturana, and aimed at one specific player, a midfielder named Gabriel Gomez, the guy everyone called Barabbas. The message was simple, and it was monstrous. If Barabbas Gomez steps onto that field, there will be bombs. In the coach's house, in Gomez's house. Think about that. These are professional athletes, at a World Cup, in America, and someone is telling their coach who he's allowed to play, with a bomb threat. Maturana caved. He had no choice. He pulled Barabbas from the lineup. And so, rattled, shaken, playing under a shadow no team should ever have to play under, Colombia walked out to face the United States on June 22, 1994, at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. The score was 0-0. 35th minute. An American player, John Harkes, drives forward on the left and whips a low cross into the box, hard and fast and dangerous. And Andres Escobar does what a defender is supposed to do. He slides. He stretches out his leg to cut the ball off before it can reach an American attacker. But the ball catches his foot at the worst possible angle, and it changes direction. And it rolls the wrong way, past his own goalkeeper, into his own net. 1-0, United States. And there's this image, this photograph, that went around the world. Escobar, face down on the grass, arms stretched out, just lying there. For a second, he doesn't get up, like the ground opened underneath him. His own goalkeeper Oscar Cordoba later said Escobar told him something so calm it almost breaks your heart. Just, go on. Get the ball out of the net. Keep going. That's who he was. Even then, even in that moment. But the game slipped away. The Americans scored again. Colombia pulled one back late, but it wasn't enough. 2-1. The United States won. And just like that, the favorites, the golden generation, the team Pelé picked to win it all, were on the edge of the cliff. Colombia won their final game, beat Switzerland 2-0, but it was already over. The math didn't save them. They were out, eliminated in the first round, dead last in their group. The dream was gone, and a nation that had pinned everything, on this team, turned its grief into rage. And a lot of that rage found one face, the man who put the ball in his own net. Now here's where the story turns into something else, something human, something almost unbearable when you know how it ends. After they were knocked out, the coach told his players, "Look, stay in America a while. Let things cool down back home. See the country, give it time." And some of them did. But Andres Escobar wanted to go home. His sister remembered him saying it plainly, "I want to go to Colombia and show my face." A teammate warned him, suggested they stick around, travel a bit, let the anger fade, and Escobar brushed it off. Back in Medellín, he said, "Everybody loves us." He truly believed that. He had no reason not to. And before he left, encouraged by a friend, he sat down and wrote something. A column for one of Colombia's biggest newspapers, El Tiempo. His own words, to the whole country. He didn't make excuses. He took responsibility. He talked about the pain of it, how in the most important moment, the team couldn't be what the country needed them to be. And then he wrote lines that would echo forever. He asked people to stay calm, to keep their respect for one another. He said it had been a phenomenal, once-in-a-lifetime experience, something he'd never felt before. And he ended it like this: "We'll see each other soon, because life doesn't end here. Life doesn't end here." He wrote those words at the end of June. The newspaper printed them on July 3rd. By the time Colombia read them, Andres Escobar was already gone. Because on the night of July 1st, Escobar went out. Friends called him. They wanted to lift his spirits, get him out of the house, remind him he was still loved. They went out in El Poblado, a neighborhood in Medellín, bars, a club. And somewhere in that night, the friends drifted apart, and Escobar ended up in the parking lot, alone, in his car, around 3 in the morning. Earlier, inside, there'd been a group. 2 of them were brothers, the Gallon brothers, known drug traffickers, and according to the accounts, they'd been taunting him, throwing that own goal in his face. Own goal, over and over. Escobar asked them to stop. He didn't want a fight. He never wanted a fight. That wasn't who he was. But out in that parking lot, it wasn't over. 3 men come toward his car. There's an argument. It escalates fast. And then 2 of them pull out guns. And what witnesses described next is the detail that has haunted this case for more than 30 years. As the shots ring out, one of the shooters is shouting a word, the same word, again and again, matching it to every trigger pull. Goal. Goal. Like a soccer announcer calling a goal, 6 times. Turning the worst mistake of Andres Escobar's life into the soundtrack of his death. The gunman climbed into a pickup truck and disappeared into the dark. Escobar was rushed to the hospital, and about 45 minutes later, the gentleman of football was gone. He was 27 years old. The country broke. More than 100,000 people flooded the streets of Medellín for his funeral, a sea of grief for a man whose only crime, in the eyes of the mob, was sliding to block a soccer ball. And the man who pulled the trigger didn't run for long. His name was Humberto Castro Muñoz, and he wasn't some random stranger in a parking lot. He was a driver, a bodyguard, for those same drug traffickers, the Gallon brothers. Within a day, he confessed. He was convicted, sentenced to 43 years in prison. 43 years, for the murder that stopped a nation's heart. But he didn't serve them. He walked out of prison in 2005, 11 years, for good behavior. And the Gallon brothers, the men at the center of that night, the men accused of getting the whole thing rolling, they were investigated for obstruction of justice. And they served about 15 months. 15. There have long been allegations that the case was corrupted, that money changed hands, that the prosecutor's office was bought. 15 months. For Andres Escobar's life. And this, right here, is where I have to be honest with you. Because the story you've probably heard, a man murdered for scoring an own goal, is the version that's spread around the world. It's clean, it's simple, it fits on a headline. But the people who've studied this case for decades will tell you, it's more complicated than that. For years, the popular theory has been that it was about betting, that the cartels had wagered enormous sums on Colombia, and when the Golden Team crashed out, somebody lost a fortune, and somebody wanted blood. It's a chilling theory, but here's the thing. It was never actually proven. Colombian prosecutors never confirmed that a lost bet was the motive. Nobody has ever definitively established why Andres Escobar died that night. Was it revenge for the own goal? Was it a bet gone wrong? Was it just a drunken argument in a parking lot that spiraled into murder? In a city where, at that time, life was tragically, terrifyingly cheap. More than 30 years later, we still don't fully know. His own coach, Maturana, said something about it that stays with you. He rejected the simple story. He said, our society believed that soccer killed Andres. But Andres was a soccer player killed by society. A country tearing itself apart, and it swallowed its gentlest son. That's the harder truth. Not a movie villain, not one clean motive, a whole broken moment in time, and one good man standing in the middle of it. And that's what makes it so hard to let go of. Because Andres Escobar wasn't a gangster. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't part of that world. He was the one guy who was supposed to prove that Colombia could be known for something beautiful instead of something bloody. His family made sure he'd be remembered for exactly that. They started a foundation in his name to give kids a chance to play the game he loved. There's a statue of him standing in Medellín to this day, and his story's been told in films watched around the world. His life pulled apart and put back together, again and again, by people who still can't quite believe it happened. Which brings us back to right now. Because the World Cup is back in America, 32 years later, same country, same stage where it all went wrong. And Colombia is still in it, playing this week, chasing the run they never got to finish in 1994. A new golden generation, in the same land where the last one was buried. And somewhere in all that noise, all those flags, all those chants, there's a name that never really left. The gentleman. The man who came home to show his face. The man who wrote, in the last words the world would ever hear from him, "Life doesn't end here." He was right about a lot of things. I hope, somehow, he was right about that one too.